Hey everybody, I'm Andrew of the Movie Buff Pains, and this is my co-host, Phoebe. She was meowing her head off outside the door, so I thought it might be easier to try to just have her in here. I think I might be wrong on that, but we're going to give it a try. As long as you behave, okay? My video today is part 3 of my short series on the eras of Disney. I left off at the end of the Disney Renaissance in part 2, and so I'll be going to the last 2 eras that'll bring us up to the most current films today. After Disney's Renaissance ended, they began to try out different things with their films, various forms of animation, tone of story, and this was known as the experimental era. We got a lot of interesting films out of this era, actually, and some of my favorites too, which, if you look at it from Disney's standpoint, they have a lot of flops in this category. They just did not do well at the box office, and they believe that a lot of people just didn't like them because they didn't fall into the tone of stuff that came out, say, during the Renaissance or the Golden Era. It wasn't traditional Disney, but for me, that's what I liked most about it. The first film that came out in the experimental era was actually Fantasia 2000. I showed this double set off in part 1 for Fantasia, but this also has the sequel, Fantasia 2000, in it. I remember seeing this one in theaters, actually. I got to see it on an IMAX screen. This was probably one of the first IMAX films I ever saw in my memory, and it was amazing to see something on such a large screen as well. Fantasia 2000, I think, followed perfectly in the steps of Fantasia. The animation has become updated, varying styles just like the original as well. The music that they chose was great pieces of classical music, and it was just so much fun to watch. It still is fun to watch, and it is definitely one of my favorites. Just for one, I have great memories of actually seeing it at the theater, but 2, it probably is what geared my love of instrumental music so much. I definitely give this movie a solid 4 out of 5 for that reason. It is just so much fun, and if you haven't seen it, I definitely suggest checking it out. The next film to come out in this era was Disney's first 3D feature. Now, Pixar had done 3 films by this point, showing that 3D animation was viable, and it was big at the box office. It was such a novel concept at this point. No one else was doing it, and so Disney themselves decided to jump on that bandwagon and invest in starting up 3D animation. Their first feature that was entirely animated in 3D was Dinosaur. This is actually a really good film overall, and the animation may not hold up by today's standards, but when you think about the fact that this, wow, is now 20 years old, and you look at it through that lens, it is actually quite a piece of history for animation. And the story is really good. I love the characters. I've always been a big fan of dinosaurs ever since seeing Jurassic Park as a kid. And so this movie holds a special place for me. Even if it's not Disney's greatest work, it was definitely one that was exciting at the time. I definitely give Dinosaur 3.5, easy. It is a wonderful film, and that's another one that seems like a lot of people may not have seen, but it's definitely worth giving a watch. The next movie to come out has definitely become a crowd favorite, especially for if you were like me and were a little kid when you saw this. It's just gotten better with age, honestly. The next movie to come out has definitely become a crowd favorite in the years since its release, and I'm full-heartedly in love with this film. It is something that honestly has gotten a little better with age, and that would be The Emperor's New Groove. This is the double set with the direct-to-disc sequel. Of course, I'll just be talking about the original piece. The Emperor's New Groove has a great voice cast, is a fun, buddy cop story, and has just a lot about it to love, if not the biggest part of it being Kronk, which is why they gave him the sequel. The jokes still land somehow, even after watching it dozens of times in my life. The characters are all lovable, and it is just such a fun film, just across the board. I know I'm saying that about everything so far, but really, I don't know how you can not have fun with this particular film, especially. So it gets 4 out of 5 stars from me. It is a fun ride, and I love revisiting it all the time. The next film in the era was Atlantis, The Lost Empire. This is another double set with its direct-to-disc sequel. I'm really happy with this release. We bought the movie set like 5 years ago without a slipcover, and it took that long for us to be able to find a slipcover for it, just because it's been out of print for so long. So that's thanks to my wife Bethany. Thank you, sweetie. This looks so much better with a slipcover on it. Atlantis was definitely a favorite of mine as a kid. It's got a much darker tone to it. And Atlantis isn't necessarily a lot darker than the average Disney film, but it's definitely different in its tone, which is probably the reason it didn't do so well at the box office, is because people didn't want, something new from Disney. They just wanted more of the same stuff that they had seen in the decades prior, which is really unfortunate because Atlantis is fun. It has got a great cast of characters with personalities all over the place. The mixture of 2D and 3D animation is honestly beautiful, and the scoring from James Newton Howard is phenomenal. I definitely give Atlantis 4 out of 5 stars. It is honestly a good film, and I wish more people would give it a chance, because I know a lot of people haven't. It is one I think that it should definitely be viewed, especially if you like something that's animated but has maybe a more serious tone to it. The next one to come out was one of the successes Disney had during this era, and it's also gotten so much love over the years. I constantly see people gushing over this movie online, and I'm glad for it. It is a cute film. It is so cute. And that is Lilo and Stitch. This is another 2-movie collection with the direct-to-disc sequel, and I'll quickly say about the sequel, it is actually one of the few direct-to-disc sequels that I actually consider to be good. I don't know what Disney did when they got that one made, but they did right by it, honestly. It was really well done. But of course, it was still, the original was the better of the two, and that's of course what I'm talking about right now. Lilo and Stitch was so interesting when it came out. I think what Disney did best with this movie was the ad campaign. The ad campaign for Lilo and Stitch was probably some of the best movie advertising I've ever seen. It caught my eye as a kid so quickly, and I was hooked to go see this film. The ads for Lilo and Stitch always started off with a clip from a classic Renaissance film. And then halfway through the clip, Stitch would somehow break into the scene and would just wreak havoc. And seeing those on TV and in the theaters caught my attention so fast. I was sitting there going, who is this little blue guy who's just rating all my favorite films? I don't know who he is, but I like him. And Lilo and Stitch is such a good film. The music is really catchy, the animation is so nice, and the story, I mean, a little girl and an alien getting along. That is definitely something that is so much fun to watch, especially with the fact that this little girl has an obsession with Elvis Presley. I mean, that is such a random little bit to have, but I love it. Definitely 4 out of 5 stars for me. Lilo and Stitch is a classic that should be viewed plenty of times in your life. The next film to come out is actually one of my favorite Disney films, period. And I could probably make a whole separate video just to gush about this film. Maybe I will one day, I don't know. But I'll try and keep my comments fairly short on this one just so that I don't have too long of a runtime and lose you guys in this. The next film that came out was Treasure Planet. I love the Treasure Island story, period. I have really enjoyed just about every version of Treasure Island I've ever watched. Treasure Planet, though, was something so different to me because now you took Treasure Island and put it in space, and I love science fiction. So this was a near perfect mix for me. Treasure Planet is a 5-star just for me personally. If I were to try and be more realistic and non-biased about it, I would still give it 4 stars. Because it is such a fun ride. The mixture of science fiction and traditional fantasy is really quite amazing how well they blended it together. And the idea to make the relationship between Jim Hawkins and Long John Silver more of a surrogate father relationship rather than just kind of his buddy was so much better than the original story, in my opinion, just for that fact. James Newton Howard did the score, and it is probably one of my favorite soundtracks of all time, honestly. It is beautiful music. And I've gotten older and I know the voice cast now, and I love it all the more just for the fact that it's got so many good names in it for the cast. So for me on that one, 4 to 5 stars easily, depending on how I'm feeling. Usually 5. Next in the line was Brother Bear. Again, another double pack. Disney did a ton of these when they really got into Blu-ray. So it is rather nice to be able to have the sequels if I ever feel like watching them. Brother Bear was a moderate success, I believe, for them. This was another movie to feature the music of Phil Collins, just like with Tarzan. I think that they hoped that they could kind of replicate some of the success just purely by having Phil Collins do the music, and there were definitely some good songs in there, but they didn't quite live up to the expectation of what he did for Tarzan. Brother Bear also had a slightly darker tone to it. I mean, we had characters in that movie that dealt with loss of family. That's definitely something that most of us can relate to in a way, and it really is just, it's a touching film in ways. It's one that I do love revisiting from time to time, just to see how well Disney did with the character growth in this particular film. It was definitely something that I don't feel like you got in as many of their films. I mean, your characters just kind of glide through and you hope they learn something, whereas in this one, I definitely felt good that the character really came out the other end a changed individual, and it's definitely one that is always worth revisiting. I give that one, I'd probably say a 3.5 stars on that one, but it's still definitely well worth the watch. Next up was Home on the Range. Home on the Range was, it's a fun film. It's definitely not one of Disney's best, especially out of this particular era, but it still is fun. It's definitely a light-hearted adventure. I do like the villain in it. He has a really catchy song. It's more like an earworm, honestly. But it is still fun to watch every once in a while, and I would give it 3 stars, in all honesty. It is fun, but it's definitely, not Disney's best effort. The next film was where Disney started into their 3D seriously. By this point, we had had several Pixar films. They were already well ahead in the game, even though they are owned by Disney. But Walt Disney Animation themselves had yet to really punch their way into the format. This was the first serious film to try and do so. It didn't do so well at the box office, but you still got to give them credit for giving it the old college try. That one was Chicken Little. This is the 3D Blu-ray copy I have with its lenticular slip. I don't really know if it has an effect at all. Chicken Little is definitely an interesting film. I mean, we're taking an old nursery rhyme and expanding upon it, and sort of bringing it into a modernized setting as well. It's not just the sky is falling, it's aliens are invading, and no one's believing this little chicken. And it's definitely an interesting one for sure. I probably would honestly give it 3 stars as well. It's entertaining, but it definitely didn't land the way Disney hoped it would, I think. The next one to come out was Meet the Robinsons. This is also the 3D Blu-ray, and this one I believe did a little better in the box office, but it still was rather underwhelming. And it's a really good story, honestly. I mean, a kid learning about what his future holds for him, literally like finding out from the future. It's just a fun film. It's really underrated in my opinion. I definitely give this one 4 stars. It's actually really enjoyable, and the characters in it are just so crazy and over the top, and I sit here and I'm just like, I really hope that we can have some version of this future that Disney painted for us, because it is just a wonderful story all across the board. This next film It's debatable. Some sources say that this film is the end of the experimental era, and other sources say this one is actually the beginning of Disney's revival. Just looking at the numbers and whatnot, I'm more inclined to say that this marked the end of the experimental era. And that one actually is Bolt. This is the 3D Blu-ray lenticular cover. Really enjoy this one. Bolt is a cute film. It really is. I mean, I don't know where they came up with the idea for this particular story, but it is such a fun film to watch. They make these animals so darn cute. If there's something that Disney does well, it is making cute animals. But yeah, 3.5, definitely worth watching. With the end of the experimental era, we came to Disney's revival. This is where Disney is now considered to be back at the top of their game and pumping out some really good films. I'm inclined to say that that's about a 50-50 true statement. There are definitely some great movies that have come out of this era, and there are some that are like, you know, they're okay. And this will take us up to the most current release of Disney. And I sure hope that with all this pandemic stuff that we're able to get back to somewhat of a regular movie release schedule eventually, because I know as of right now, Disney's basically put a halt on everything, and that's really unfortunate. I hope that they are able to figure something out so that we can start seeing their movies again. And please don't just slap them on Disney Plus. If you don't release your movies physically anymore, I might just scream my head off. The first movie that came out, The Princess and the Frog. This is the reissue they did with a slipcover, which it's very nice. I like this one a lot. The Princess and the Frog was a big success for Disney, and it was their second to last 2D animated film. They hadn't made 2D animation in approximately 4 years. When this came out, I was getting sick of all the 3D animation, because it wasn't just Disney, it was Disney and DreamWorks, and just everyone was trying to do copycat work, and 3D was starting to own the world. So Disney putting out a 2D animated feature again was a relief to me. I'm really sad that they just aren't going to be doing them like this anymore. And Princess and the Frog comes very, very close to the traditional formula from Disney, especially because it is a Disney princess film. The animation is lovely. The songs that Randy Newman crafted for this movie are spectacular. The villain is nasty. The characters are fun to watch, and everything about it just screams classic Disney. It really does. I kind of thought that Disney was getting back to their original formula. One can dream anyways. But Princess and the Frog definitely gets 4 out of 5 stars in my book. It was just a lovely film and is definitely one that is always worth a rewatch. The next movie to come out was Tangled. This is the 3D Blu-ray with a lenticular slip. Really happy to own this one. It's probably one of my favorite 3D covers. Tangled is another one that is a favorite of mine. It is such a fun film. I know, I keep saying that these films are fun, but Tangled took a story that I honestly kind of thought was bland. I mean, the story of Rapunzel, girl's locked in a tower and, Prince comes to save her by climbing her hair. Whoop-de-doo. Is that all the story is? Disney took it and was like, no, you know what? Girl's gonna get out of the tower. The guy who's gonna save her is actually a thief, not a prince, and he's not even gonna really save her. She's gonna save herself. They took it and flipped it on its head in a wonderful, wonderful way. And it is such a good film to watch. And the animation, this is when Disney's 3D animation really came up to par for me. It was so good. The detail to everything was phenomenal. The character designs were just so beautiful to look at. The scenery is gorgeous. And this was what made me realize Disney can do this format well, and their movies have definitely gotten really, really good looking in the years since Tangled came out. I give Tangled 4.5 stars. It is such a fun change of pace for this particular fairy tale, and they just did a wonderful job with it, honestly. The next film to come out was Disney's last 2D animated film, and that one was Winnie the Pooh. They hadn't done a theatrical Winnie the Pooh movie in years. I think the one that came out before this one was the Tigger movie, and that was almost 10 years prior, if not maybe a little more. So it had been some time since we'd seen these characters on the big screen. And I just have the standard Blu-ray for this one. They've never really done anything fancy for it. Winnie the Pooh is a fun film. It definitely wasn't the best one to come out so far in this era. I would give it 3.5 stars. It is really cute. It reminds me a lot of childhood. I watched Winnie the Pooh all the time when I was a kid, whether it was the movies or the TV show or everything in between. I mean, I really did enjoy it. I definitely do see the charm in this movie. It is really cute. It's very simple. And it's just a fun little piece to put on it. It's not complicated at all. It's just, you know, cute. It's everything that you would want for a little kid to probably enjoy. So yeah, 3.5 stars for me on Winnie the Pooh. The next one to come out was WreckIt Ralph. This is the 3D Blu-ray with a lenticular slip. Really like that one. WreckIt Ralph is such a fun movie and a great original story from Disney. I mean, looking at the lives of video game characters when they aren't being played, it is really cool. And not to mention, the cast is phenomenal. The animation is really fun and bubbly. I mean, it's all video game graphics, so it's meant to not totally look realistic. It's meant to look like what you might picture a video game movie looking like in a lot of ways, and it is fun. It's a great movie overall. I give it 4.5 stars, possibly even 5. I mean, it's one of Disney's original ideas that really hit the right spot, in my opinion. And I enjoy watching this one over and over. It is always such a fun ride to see the shenanigans of these video game characters. And I really kind of wish that the video games in this movie existed, because all of them sound so much fun. The next film to come out was the big worldwide blockbuster Frozen. This is the Movie Club exclusive slipcover. I really like this a lot more than the original slipcover, so I'm excited to have that one in my collection. Frozen, when I saw it the first time in the theaters, was great. I loved the music, the animation was great, the story was intriguing to me. And then Frozen Fever, not the short, the actual Frozen Fever that hit the nation after that movie, really got under my skin. The music was playing everywhere, everyone was talking about it, toys, games, costumes, everything was Frozen. And that got on my nerves really fast. It actually soured my opinion of the movie for a little bit. But now, I'll maybe watch the movie once or twice in a year, and I enjoy it again. I think it's a good film. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. I know some of you probably hate me for that and are sitting there going, no, Frozen's the best film that Disney ever put out. And you know, that is your opinion. My opinion is that it's a good film. And so 4 out of 5 stars. It is fun to watch every once in a while. Next film that came out was Big Hero 6. This is actually the Target exclusive Steelbook. We never wound up buying the regular Blu-ray release of it, but I really love this artwork. It is just such a good piece. And again, it was exclusive. It's harder to find now. Big Hero 6 is an animated Marvel film. We don't really have those, especially coming out in theaters. It's so different comparatively with a lot of Marvel's other properties. Not to mention that I was shocked that we actually had a movie from Disney, of all companies, that dealt with a character who was dealing with the loss of a family member, along with the depression and whatnot that came following that, and him trying to cope with it. That is something that I had never seen in an animated film before, and I was shocked that Disney was the one to do it. And it is so good in that fact. This is another one that I would give 4 out of 5 stars to. The story is very interesting, the animation is lovely, and the main character's story arc is one that I was really impressed by from Disney. The next movie oh, you woke up from your nap now? I'm sure some of you were wondering what happened to my co-host. She has been napping in the corner. Hello, sweetie. The next movie to come out during this era was Zootopia. This is I think, one of the best films to come out in the revival so far. We had not only some of the best animation that Disney has ever done, but also a really good storyline. We had a buddy cop film that was just super, super fun to follow along with. And I gotta give props to Disney on just how well they animated this film. Not only is the scenery astonishing, but they actually made all the animals proportionate. Like, usually you don't get that in a lot of animation. They'll try kind of size the characters up and down to fit with whatever they're doing, but this, they actually made them their proper sizes, and it was really cool to see. I definitely give Zootopia 5 stars, because it's honestly one of my favorites to come out of the revival, and it's just that good of a film in my opinion. They just did everything right with this one. Do you want to tell the next one? Or do you want me to keep talking? You've been awful quiet this video. Are you sure you don't want to announce the next one? Fine, just keep giving me the silent treatment. The next one to come out after Zootopia was Moana. This one was a really good film. This wasn't nearly as good as Zootopia in my opinion, but it definitely was on the level of like Big Hero 6 or Frozen. Definitely a 4 out of 5 stars for me. The animation was gorgeous in this one. The water scenes are spectacular, and the music was really fun as well. Lin-Manuel Miranda did a really good job with crafting the songs for this movie in my opinion. And it's always fun to have The Rock playing a character in a film. Yes, Dwayne Johnson, you brought life to Maui in a very good way. I've only got 2 more movies to show off to you, and at this point in physical media history, Disney has moved on to 4K Blu-ray releases now. The next one up is Ralph Breaks the Internet. This was a really good follow-up to WreckIt Ralph. I don't think it was quite as good in my opinion. I did enjoy the original a bit more, but this was definitely a good follow-up. Though I have to give it to Disney, I mean, you found a way to show off just everything you own. I mean, I think that was a bit much in my opinion, but it was still kind of fun, especially seeing all the Disney princesses in one room together. I will admit, I never thought that would happen. Ralph Breaks the Internet definitely gets a solid 4 out of 5 stars from me. It is a fun one to watch, the story is pretty good, and the animation, of course, is just great to look at. So that brings us to the most current entry in the revival. As far as it seems, the revival is going to continue to who knows what point, but the last movie I have to show you, is Frozen 2. Frozen 2 took a very different turn compared to Frozen. It took a slightly darker turn in tone, which I appreciated. There was definitely some more serious aspects to this film versus the first film that I thought definitely gave it a 1-up. I actually like it better than Frozen, but I still would probably give it a 4-star rating. And it's definitely a good follow-up to the original. You are just getting all over me right now, aren't you? So that brings us current with all the Disney releases, and so we are currently still in the Disney revival. I have no idea how long that era will continue on for. I guess we'll eventually hit some sort of standstill. Heck, we might even be at the end of the revival era right now, seeing as the pandemic has halted everything. When we come back, maybe it will be in the post-COVID era or something. I don't know for sure. But it'll be interesting to see where Disney goes from here. Well, thank you guys for joining me on this journey and going through the eras of Disney and seeing just all the films that have shaped this company's legacy. And thank you for being patient with me as it took some time to get this video out, and as I've had a very fidgety co-host for this particular installment. I hope that you enjoyed it. The next video I will be doing will actually be an overview of my entire Disney collection with my wife Bethany. We're both really excited to show that off. Are you? But we will hopefully be making that in the near future here to get it up for you. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, hit the bell to get the notifications, and we will definitely see you on the next video. And, you know, you guys stay safe out there, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.